A father builds a home with his own hands, hoping it becomes a sanctuary where his children will always find warmth. But sometimes, comfort turns into entitlement. I spent 25 years working 12-hour shifts on cold concrete floors, convincing myself that every drop of sweat was securing my son's future. But when you give a child everything without ever asking them to earn a single step of the way, you don't raise a successor, you raise a predator waiting for you to weak. I spent 25 years working 12-hour shifts on cold concrete floors, convincing myself that every drop of sweat was securing my son's future. But when you give a child everything, without ever asking them to earn a single step of the way, you don't raise a successor. You raise a predator waiting for you to grow weak. When my son walked into my living room with a legal folder and a smirk, demanding I hand over the deed to the home his mother and I built, he thought he was cornering an old, tired man. What he didn't realize was that quiet men don't get flustered. We make moves in silence. And by the time he tried to take my house, I had already sold it to the one person who controlled his entire life, his boss. Welcome to Dad's mighty revenge. If you believe that respect is earned through loyalty and that a father's lifelong hard work should never be extorted by greedy hands, take a second to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below letting me know where you are listening from today. I read every single one of your stories, and your support means the world to this community. To understand how a son turns into a stranger, you have to look back at the quiet mistakes made over decades. My name is Arthur. I am 59 years old, and for 32 years, I ran a commercial roofing and masonry outfit in the county. My wife, Eleanor, passed away 6 years ago, after a long, quiet battle with illness. Before she passed, she held my hand in that hospital room and asked me to make sure our son, Jason, was taken care of. That promise became my blind spot. Jason is 26. He never knew what it was like to go to bed worrying about the electricity bill or whether the furnace would run through a winter night. When he wrecked his first car at 19, I paid the repair bill in full. When he failed out of his business courses because he preferred spending his nights at downtown bars, I covered his debts and used my connections to get him a desk job as a logistics manager at Vance Industrial Contracting, a massive firm run by an old friend and former client of mine, Marcus Vance. Marcus was a self-made man who built a multi-million-dollar operation from scratch. He gave Jason a 5-figure desk salary purely out of respect for my 30 years of reliable work in the industry. While Jason spent his paychecks on designer clothes, leased sports cars, and bragging to his friends, I kept living in the 4-bedroom craftsman home on Willow Creek Lane. It was the house Eleanor and I bought in 1998. Every brick in that walkway was laid by my own hands. Sitting right across the street from us was David, a 22-year-old kid who lost his father young. David was working 2 jobs, one at the local lumber yard and another doing night stalking, saving up every penny to go to trade school. Whenever David saw me carrying heavy bundles of shingles or trimming the high branches near my driveway, he'd drop whatever he was doing, run across the street, and grab the heavy end. He didn't ask for money, and he didn't expect a favor. He just understood what it meant to respect an elder. The storm broke on a rainy Thursday afternoon in early August. I had been feeling a sharp, agonizing pain in my lower back for weeks, a reminder of 30 years of heavy lifting. My doctor had advised me to undergo a minor lumbar surgery to avoid permanent nerve damage. I was resting in my armchair in the living room, a heating pad behind my back, when the front door clicked open. Jason walked in, wearing his tailored suit, mud on his polished shoes, accompanied by his girlfriend, Vanessa. Vanessa didn't even bother taking off her muddy heels as she stepped onto Eleanor's Persian rug. She looked around the living room with a cold, calculating gaze, tapping her long acrylic nails against her designer handbag. There was no greeting. No, "How's your back, Dad?" No, "Did the doctor give you your test results?" Jason tossed a thick manila folder onto the coffee table, right in front of my lap. He looked down at me, his voice laced with an arrogant, impatient sneer. "Sign over the house, old man. We need to clear this up before your surgery next week." If this story resonates with you, and if you have ever faced a moment where the child you sacrificed everything for treated you like a stepping stone for their own greed, please take a moment to subscribe. Sharing these hard truths ensures no father has to face disrespect in silence. I looked from the manila folder up to my son's face. "What is this, Jason?" Jason crossed his arms, leaning against the fireplace mantel. "It's a quitclaim deed, transferring full ownership of Willow Creek Lane to me. Vanessa and I are getting married next spring. We want to remodel the place, strip out all this outdated wood, and convert it into a modern layout. Plus, I need the equity to put up as collateral for a commercial real estate deal I'm going into." Vanessa giggled, picking up a framed photograph of my late wife off the side table, casually setting it face down on the wood. "Honestly, Arthur, at your age, maintaining a 4-bedroom house is just ridiculous. Once you have your back operation, you won't even be able to push a lawnmower. You can move into that senior living community over on 4th Street. It's much more suitable for your condition." My blood ran cold, but I didn't lose my temper. I opened the folder. It wasn't just a request. It was a pre-drafted transfer document giving Jason complete control of the property, leaving me with 0 rights, 0 residency guarantees, and 0 equity. I looked at Jason and asked softly, "Your mother and I put 25 years of our lives into this dirt. Where am I supposed to live while I recover from back surgery?" Jason smirked, jangling his car keys in his hand. "Dad, come on. Stop being dramatic. You've got savings. The senior apartments have staff to nurse you. You're just holding on to assets you don't even use anymore. Sign the paper now so I can turn it into the county clerk tomorrow morning." When I didn't reach for a pen, Jason's demeanor turned dark. He leaned over the table, pressing his hands against the wood, his face inches from mine. "Look at yourself, old man," he sneered. "You can barely stand up without groaning. You're living in the past. If you don't sign this willingly, I'll file for a legal conservatorship, showing you aren't mentally fit to manage real estate after your medical procedures. Either way, this house is mine." They turned on their heels and walked out, letting the heavy front door slam behind them. I sat in that dark living room for a long time. I didn't cry, and I didn't yell. The foolish father who believed unconditional love meant accepting disrespect died right there in that armchair. The next morning at 8 a.m., I made 2 phone calls. The first call was to my estate attorney, Mr. Harold Vance. The second call was directly to Marcus Vance, owner of Vance Industrial Contracting, Jason's ultimate boss, and my longtime acquaintance. I invited Marcus to my home for coffee at 10 a.m. When Marcus arrived, he noticed the slight limp in my walk and asked how I was doing. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him about my upcoming back surgery, my retirement plans, and then I laid out the exact exchange that had taken place with Jason the evening prior. Marcus sat at my kitchen table, his heavy brow furrowed in absolute disgust. He knew what hard work was. He had built his firm from nothing, and he detested unearned arrogance above all else. Marcus shook his head, taking a sip of black coffee. "Arthur, I hired your boy out of respect for you, but over at the office, he acts like he owns the floor. He comes in at 10 a.m., dumps his work on the junior clerks, and boasts that he's stepping into major real estate capital soon. I had no idea he was talking about taking your home." I looked Marcus in the eye and said, "Marcus, I want to sell Willow Creek Lane, but I'm not selling it to Jason. I want to sell it to your firm's private real estate holding group, today, at 20% below market value, under one strict condition." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What's the condition, Arthur?" I smiled, a cold, unbothered smile. "You pay the cash lump sum into an irrevocable trust for my medical and retirement care. You lease the property back to me for $1 a year for the rest of my life. And as the new corporate landlord, you handle the eviction of anyone trying to claim unauthorized residency." Marcus didn't hesitate for a single second. He extended his heavy hand across the table. "Consider it done, old friend." By Monday afternoon, the transaction was officially recorded with the county recorder's office. The house no longer belonged to Arthur Mitchell. It belonged to Vance Holdings, LLC. That same morning, I had invited young David from across the street over to my porch. I told him that after my surgery, I needed an assistant to manage the maintenance of my tool shop and supervise my estate affairs while I rested. I offered to pay his entire trade school tuition in full, along with a fair weekly wage. The young man had tears in his eyes as he shook my hand and promised he wouldn't let me down. At 3 p.m. on Monday, the driveway crunched. Jason drove up in his leased BMW, carrying a notary public he had hired to force my signature on the quitclaim deed. Vanessa was right behind him, holding a tape measure, ready to measure the living room for new furniture. They walked into the house without knocking. Jason strutted into the dining room, slapping the folder down again. "All right, old man, I brought the notary. Let's get this over with so I don't have to keep driving back and forth out here." I was sitting at the head of the mahogany table, dressed in a sharp button-down shirt. Sitting to my right was Marcus Vance, wearing his tailored Navy corporate suit, along with his chief legal counsel. Jason stopped dead in his tracks. His face drained of color as he recognized the CEO of his company sitting in his father's dining room. Jason stammered, Mr. Vance?" "What are you doing here? Is there a problem at the office?" Marcus Vance cleared his throat, leaning back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Jason with icy cold contempt. "There's no problem at the office, Jason," Marcus said smoothly. "I'm here in my capacity as the managing director of Vance Holdings LLC. Jason blinked, utterly confused, looking between me and his boss. "I don't understand." I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the table. "Jason, you told me last Thursday that I needed to sign over the house because I was too old to manage it. You told me you were going to take the deed one way or another." Jason's eyes darted nervously to Marcus. "Dad, come on. That was just a private family conversation." "It wasn't a conversation, Jason," I interrupted, my voice calm, level, and unyielding. "It was a demand. So I took your advice. I decided to relieve myself of the burden of homeownership." I tapped the certified legal deed sitting in front of Marcus. As of 8 o'clock this morning, Willow Creek Lane was sold to Vance Holdings. The transaction is complete. The deed is registered. I no longer own this house. Vanessa let out a sharp, hysterical gasp. "What? You sold it? To his boss?" Jason's jaw dropped. He stepped toward the table, his face turning beet red, panic surging through his voice. "Dad, are you insane? That was my inheritance. You sold my house out from under me?" "It was never your house, Jason," I said coldly. "You didn't lay a single brick. You didn't pay a single dollar of property tax. You contributed nothing but greed." Marcus Vance stood up from his chair, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked at Jason with absolute authority. "And Jason," Marcus added, his voice ringing through the dining room. "Corporate policy at Vance Industrial strictly prohibits employees from engaging in predatory financial coercion. Furthermore, your position as logistics manager has been reviewed by board audit this morning. Your employment with Vance Industrial Contracting is terminated effective immediately." Jason stood frozen. The reality hit him like a physical blow. In less than 2 minutes, he had lost the house he tried to steal, the equity he wanted to squander, and the high-paying job he had taken for granted. "Mr. Vance, please," Jason begged, his arrogant tone completely shattered into desperate weeping. "You can't fire me. How am I going to pay the lease on my car? How am I going to pay rent?" Marcus picked up his leather briefcase. "You're going to do what every man has to do when the safety net is cut. You're going to go out into the real world and figure it out." Vanessa didn't even wait for Jason at the door. She looked at his pale, ruined face, scoffed in disgust, pulled her handbag over her shoulder, and walked down the driveway to her own car without saying another word to him. The lifestyle she was hunting for had evaporated in front of her eyes. Jason turned back to me, tears streaming down his cheeks, his voice cracking. "Dad, please. You're my father. You can't let them do this to me. Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at my son, the boy I had spoiled into ruin, and gave him the final gift of accountability. "You have 30 minutes to clear your personal belongings out of your old bedroom," I said quietly. "The locks on Vance Holdings property are being changed at 4 o'clock. David from across the street is supervising the grounds. Jason didn't scream. He didn't fight. The cold clarity in the room had drained every ounce of delusion out of him. He walked upstairs, packed 2 trash bags full of clothes, and walked out the front door into the rain, pulling his bags behind him down Willow Creek Lane. My back surgery took place the following Tuesday. It was a complete success. During my 2 weeks of bed rest, it wasn't Jason who checked on me. It was David, who brought over meals, made sure my prescriptions were filled, and kept the property in immaculate condition while continuing his studies. The peace that settled over my home didn't come from holding on to grudge or malice. It came from the unbothered clarity of a father who had finally done his duty. Protecting your children doesn't mean enabling their cruelty. Sometimes, the greatest act of love a father can perform is allowing his children to hit the hard wall of reality so they can finally learn how to grow up. Thank you for listening to this story on Dad's Pure Revenge. If this narrative reminded you of the importance of standing firm, knowing your worth, and protecting what you built, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Knowing your worth and setting firm boundaries is the greatest lesson a father can ever teach. Stay strong, look after the ones who look after you, and I will see you in the next story.